Alright, well, we are here with episode 7 of Wrestling Unwrapped, where Harry and Patrick will be discussing Wrestlemania 30. And it also kind of is going to double as a Daniel Bryan appreciation show, or whatever they want to call it. But without further ado, let's have a musical interlude. Uh, you guys are going to have to cover for me, as I was stupid and forgot to have the music and the right thing. You guys can banter for a second. I don't know. I mean, not helping me here.
Hi, Patrick. Hi, Harry. This particular episode of Wrestling Unwrapped is brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest on eBay. Look him up. Not only does he have action figures and DVDs, such as the one that was provided for myself for tonight's episode, he also has all kinds of regular movies and toys and pretty much anything you can think of. He just stopped carrying video games for the dollar if you're looking for a couple of video games. If you ask him specifically if he has it, I'm sure he'll give it a great deal. It's the Madhouse Toy Chest, located on eBay. Hey, Patrick.
Well, hang on, because I want to mention something, too. Not only is it brought in participation with that, but we're also brought to you in partnership with 411mania.com and lastwordonsports.com. You can find both of them online and on Facebook. And, of course, the W2M Network, which you can find on Facebook at facebook.com/W2M Network. Now, what, Harry?
Now let's start.
Have we started long enough, Sean?
Sure have.
Yeah, I'm only all right, let's do it.
Alright, take it away, guys. Hello?
Wow, it was a small clip, wasn't it?
Well, I'm not going to play the song for like a minute.
That's more of a raw reaction kind of thing.
Yes.
Although to be fair,
Harry, Harry's the one that wants us to be, a relatively shorter podcast and not go 3 hours, yet he's asking you to play the entirety of the song.
Yeah, it's about 4 minutes long. That wasn't happening.
I was not asking for the entirety of the song. Did we at least get the chorus?
Yes, I played right at the chorus.
Oh, okay, that works out. The song that you heard there was Monster by Imagine Dragons, and obviously if you've seen this show, you know that. Patrick, kind of a touchy subject for us here. This is our fan vote WrestleMania. And why don't you go ahead and explain to everybody why we're doing this particular mania, in addition to reiterating what is coming up here on Wrestling Unwrapped on the W2M Network over the course of the next 5 weeks, counting tonight.
Yeah, we kind of, when we did Woo 2M for Fastlane last week, I was going to try and save an explanation for as I was going to be leaving, but we kind of had some technical difficulties, didn't we, Sean?
Yes. My internet decided to have an outage.
But as things happen, things go right. So what we're going to be doing here, and this is more after tonight, is we're going to take not only this week, but basically the remaining weeks up until the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania 32 from AT&T Stadium. And
Patrick, didn't you get the memo? You're not supposed to call it that anymore.
Patrick, it's WrestleMania Star.
Oh, bite me. It's WrestleMania 32.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with you, but according to the WWE, it's WrestleMania Star, just like last year's was WrestleMania Playbook.
Yeah, and I was also making the joke that Vince doesn't like the granddaddy of them all thing. It's the show of shows now.
Anyway.
Well, technically speaking, I think granddaddy of them all was trademarked by the Rose Bowl, so Vince could probably get sued for using that.
He's been using that forever, though. If the Rose Bowl wanted to sue him, it should have been doing it a long time ago.
You know how those college football stodgers are. All right, go ahead and explain, Patrick.
Well, it could be like Nike. They're just now suing WWE for Just Bring It because it's too close to Just Do It.
Or Sony, and Sony considering suing a lot of video game companies for using Let's Play.
That was dumb.
I know, wrong podcast. So, okay, ahead of WrestleMania at AT&T Stadium, how's that? We're kind of going to be going through the evolution of WrestleMania and its somewhat humble beginnings as a glorified house show to the entertainment spectacular that it is now. This week is kind of a swerve because what we did is we decided to cover the very first one and the most recent one, so 1 and 31, or play button, excuse me. And then Harry made his choice for his favorite WrestleMania. I made my choice for my favorite WrestleMania. And then we left the fifth and final episode up to the fans. We made a poll on Wrestling to the Max's Facebook page and set it up for, I believe, a week. And I don't know if it was kind of an emotionally driven choice because I thought there were others that were going to be picked. But in this case, this week's, or I should say the winner of the fan poll / this week's episode ended up being WrestleMania 30. Mind you, this poll was less than 2 weeks after Daniel Bryan made his very emotional retirement on Monday Night Raw.
I just want to
we decided
I just want to say that I'm disappointed that WrestleMania 8 didn't win.
I actually voted that one myself.
All right, carry on.
So be that as it may, we decided originally we were going to do everything in chronological order. Once we saw that WrestleMania 30 was going to be the winning vote, we kind of decided, as Sean mentioned earlier, to do a bit of a Daniel Bryan appreciation show, and figured what better way to do that than to do WrestleMania 30 first. So that's what we're doing tonight, and then we'll move to chronological order with WrestleMania 1 next week, followed by 17 for me, 20 for Harry, and then 31 as our final episode before WrestleMania. And then we'll put a nice little bow on everything the Sunday after WrestleMania Star, when Harry and I will cover the true story of WrestleMania, and then we're done with WWE for probably a few weeks. Because I think by then, people will be sick of it.
We're only like 10 minutes into the show, and I'm already sick of you, Patrick. So, take it for what it's worth.
So,
anywho,
yes.
Yeah, the big thing about covering WrestleMania 30 here is the fact that, let's be honest here, we're selling out. We know for a fact that, generally speaking, the shows that our shows that have done the best are the ones that are topical. We did Royal Rumble 92 right before the 2016 edition because it was the only other Rumble where the heavyweight title was on the line, and it did really nice numbers for us. So we understand that with as relevant as Bryan's retirement is, as well as the fact that he is the primary focus of the show, we know where our bread is buttered. We're going to go out and take advantage of it.
Yeah. Geez, why don't you give it all away, Harry? Why don't you tell him wrestling's fake?
Wait, what?
There's something else that I was going to say, but just in case kids listen to our podcast, I won't.
It's still real to me, damn it.
Anyway.
All right, shall we actually get into the show now that we've spent 10 minutes?
Yeah, now that we've spoiled a lot of things for a lot of people. So I think it is about time.
Remember, kids, don't try to help.
No kidding. So, Harry, do you Are you ready to do your thing?
Yeah, I'm ready. I got them all squared up over here.
Alrighty, as we always do, when Harry actually gets here, because we didn't do it 2 weeks ago, because Harry wasn't here. Why don't you take us through the results real quick?
All right. Yeah, that's because Garmer knows that the results thing is my gimmick. Anyways, WrestleMania 30, April 6th, 2014. From, where are we at? Are we in Arizona?
No, Mercedes-Benz Superdome, New Orleans. 26 was in Arizona.
Wow, I completely spaced on that, much like Hulk Hogan did. Segue.
We'll get to that.
That was kind of on purpose, Patrick. All right, we're moving on. As I mentioned, April 6th, 2014. Disc 1 and Disc 2 contain the show itself as well as part of the Hall of Fame. Disc 3 is the rest of the Hall of Fame, the pre-show match, and the extra features. Speaking of the pre-show match, the Usos retained the tag titles in a 4-way elimination match at 16-12 when Jimmy Uso, I think. Now that they got those chess pieces, you can't tell them apart. Originally, one had the Josiah tattoo on his chest, and that was Jay. But anyway, when Jimmy Uso pins Cesaro. All right, now to the actual showtime. Daniel Bryan pins Triple H at 25:56 with knee plus. Before you give me golf, that was the actual name of the move.
That's the solid knee plus is what I've always used.
I mean, more hardcore fans are going to know it as the Baisuku knee, but they called it knee plus. Yeah. Anything. All right, moving on. The Shield defeated the team of the New Age Outlaws and Kane when Seth Rollins pinned Billy Gunn after a double-triple powerbomb, which I think equals a quintuple. Roman Reigns powerbombed both Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. And then Rollins pinned Billy Gunn. Moving on. Armbar, the Andre Rousimov Memorial Battle Royal. Armbar. It works out if you think about it. Cesaro wins at 13:24 when he last eliminates the Big Show. When I say eliminates, I mean he literally body slams him over the ropes. If you haven't seen it, it's quite impressive. I would argue one of the biggest feats of strength ever done on show in the WWE. Much more impressive than Lesnar's F5s. All right, we're moving on.
It was also a hell of a lot cleaner than Hogan slam with Andre.
Well, that's because Cesaro is like 90 times stronger than Hogan is.
You're not supposed to know that.
John Cena, brother, was Bray Wyatt with a second attitude adjustment at 22:25. Do you want to get this result here? Because I know this one irked you.
Go ahead.
Brock Lesnar ends the streak.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
I should say, this is only the second time that this has occurred. We're covering an event I was at live, so I know how this crowd was after this one. So I'll mention that when we get to the match. But go ahead.
We've never covered a show I was at. That hardly seems fair. Anywho. Brock Lesnar ends the streak, pinning The Undertaker with a third F5 at 25:11. AJ Lee retains the Divas title in the Nobody Gives a Crap match, tapping Naomi with the Black Widow at 6:50. And your main event, Daniel. Say what?
Sorry.
I didn't hear what you said there.
Double tapping. We'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about. That's about the only thing worth talking about when it comes to this match. But anywho, And your main event, as I was starting to say, Daniel Bryan wins the WWE World Heavyweight Championship back when it was still 2 belts. Now it's just the 1. When he taps Batista with the yes/LaBelle lock at 23:20.
Thank you very much,
That's all there is,
Harry, and yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, so Daniel Bryan's going 50 minutes tonight, and
49.
49 what?
49:36.
Okay, almost 50 minutes.
I'm just giving you an exact number.
Okay, fair enough. And also, you haven't asked us to cover a show you've been at. And truth be told, I didn't ask for us to cover this show. This was just a pure fluke. This got voted by our wonderful fans. So I didn't ask for this one. I only asked for Money in the Bank.
Well, you know, it happens. I'll accept it for now.
We'll get to something you're at. Maybe we'll get that amazing Dolph Ziggler versus Miz Monday Night Raw match.
I was actually at a relatively important pay-per-view. I was in the crowd in Pittsburgh in 2014 for the Royal Rumble where the fans revolted.
We may have to cover that sometime in the future.
I was also at Tables, Ladders, and Chairs 2014 as well in Cleveland, but that is neither here nor there. Let's get back to the show itself. I don't know why I can't speak tonight. Carry on.
All right. So, yeah, we've got seven different quality of matches to get through, or excuse me, 8 if you include the pre-show, which we are going to cover. I don't know. I think, are you about ready to rock and roll with this?
Let's do it.
I'll assume you said yes.
I said let's do it. I almost quoted Trish's theme song, but then I decided against it.
Okay. So, yeah, as Harry mentioned, Daniel Bryan pulls double duty and it ends up by the end of the night being his finest hour. And it is the most important streak match in its history. Folks, strap in. It's WrestleMania Triple X. From the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana, 75,000 plus was the announced attendance.
Time out. I thought we were in the Silverdome.
We're getting to that. We got to get through the pre-show match first.
Oh, we're doing the pre-show match first? Okay.
Well, we might as well do it in order.
Fine.
Yes, I know doing things in order isn't exact fun, but it makes the most sense in this case.
Right. Navigators.
Anyway. So our WrestleMania pre-show match, after a 2-hour pre-show, luckily I don't think either of us actually watched that. We just watched the pre-show match. Is for the tag team championship.
I watched the pre-show when it aired. I watched the pre-show when it aired. I didn't watch it again before covering this show, but I watched the pre-show when it aired originally.
Yeah. I think at the time that the pre-show started, I was in line for souvenirs in Champion Square.
Oh, well, listen to you, Mr. I've been to WrestleMania. Nana.
Anyway, the match is a fatal 4-way tag team elimination match for the tag team championships as the champions Jimmy and Jay, the Usos, defend against Cesaro and Jack Swagger, the Real Americans, Fernando and Diego, the Los Matadores, with El Torito, and why am I drawing a blank here?
Hold on. Right Axel.
Oh, yeah, Curtis Axel and Right Axel. I cannot believe I drew a complete blank about that.
I can. They were eliminated quick. Well, 11 minutes, but...
So, I mean, the match itself was kind of a cluster right in the beginning because you've got 4 teams and it's elimination. To me, the best part of the match was when they got down to 2, and it was the Real Americans and the Usos, being the last 2 here. And honestly, this entire match... Huh?
I said, spoiler alert.
To me, the entire point of this match wasn't even the tag team titles. It was what happened after the match. That, to me, was the entire point of this match.
I completely agree with what it set up for during WrestleMania itself.
Yeah, because, and by the way, because I followed them and paid attention right at the ending, I don't think the legal man actually pinned Cesaro when the Usos actually pinned to retain. I don't think it was the legal guy who got the pin. But that's apples and oranges, and this was 2 years ago.
Can I ask a question, Patrick? Can you tell them apart? Because I sure the hell can't.
That's why I said I had to make sure that I pay attention. And the guy in the ring gets the tag, but the guy who was tagged in goes up the corner that they were already on, while the guy who did the tagging went to the opposite corner. They both jump off and splash, I believe it was Cesaro, but then the guy who came off the right corner, which was not the tagging corner, was the one who pinned him. So I'm pretty sure the non-legal guy won, even though, like you said, everyone was so supremely confused, and the only way to tell them apart is their face paint.
In fairness, did it really matter? Fair enough. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm kind of a stickler about that at times, too, but given the fact that the ending of this match broke down into a gigantic cluster fudge-sickle.
Yeah. So,
you're welcome for that.
After Cesaro takes the pin, though, no kidding. After Cesaro takes the pin, then we essentially see the split of the Real Americans.
With them kind of teasing Swagger being the one to lay Cesaro out before he leaves, but then they make up again, and then Cesaro sweeps the legs and sends Swagger a swing in. Try saying that 5 times fast.
No kidding.
All right, carry on.
So yeah, as Harry mentioned, we get kind of a dissension between the two of them. They make up only for Cesaro to hit the Cesaro swing for now the 2nd time tonight, and amazingly, not the last. And Cesaro ends up walking off on his own. So, but I mean, the match itself wasn't bad. It was just kind of, like we said, the point of it wasn't the tag titles. The point of it was to kind of split up the Real Americans to set up later this night with the Battle Royal, and then the next night with Monday Night Raw.
The match wasn't bad. It was just kind of there. As you said, obviously the big thing coming out was the finish itself in regards to the splitting and the deforming of the Real Americans. But at the same time, though, the match itself, the ring work itself is relatively good. And as I said, I don't blame the referee for potentially switching up the legal man, because I'm not going to say he did or didn't. I don't know if he did or didn't. So I'm not going to bust his stones for it if I'm not entirely sure myself.
Exactly. So it's just, in the grand scheme of things, that part didn't matter. So, and I think we've talked too long about this match already.
Indeed. Let's get into the actual WrestleMania card. only
Exactly.
a man with... Oh, wait. There's a promo first.
I was about to say, what better way to start off WrestleMania? I have a hunch I know why they did this, though. I will say that. I have a hunch I think I know why they did it. But what better way to kick off a 4-hour, potentially one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time, than with a friggin' promo? As we're introduced after actually quite a fun intro video with everyone marching down Bourbon Street and having a good time and celebrating, the fact that we're now at 30 years, even though it's not the 38th anniversary, and this is not 30 years after WrestleMania 1, it's 29. Stuff like that drives me nuts.
Okay, to be fair, at the end of the video package, they did say welcome to the 30th edition of WrestleMania, not anniversary.
Yeah, but every time that they would talk about WrestleMania 1, they would always say 30 years later. It's not 30 years later. It's 29 years later.
Okay, to be fair, Michael Cole was an idiot.
This wasn't the promo. This wasn't Cole.
Was it that other guy, brother? Because he's an idiot, too.
This was in the promo video. The guy that was doing the video. This was not JBL. This was not Justin Roberts. This was not anybody on a live crowd. This was just in the promo video.
Oh, well, what can I say? Stuff happens.
Yeah. So Vince is the idiot because he's probably the one that was the director of it. What else is new?
I wouldn't call Vince an idiot. I would just call him senile at this point.
Yeah, it's probably the easiest way to describe him. So we're introduced with huge, pyro and everything, and then Justin Roberts introduces us to the host of WrestleMania 30, the immortal Hulk Hogan.
Your favorite wrestler! Yay!
Yay! And he proves he's an idiot yet again. Why? Because, brother, he's so, as the commentators say, he's so excited about being at WrestleMania, he thinks he's back at WrestleMania 3. Why? Because not once, but twice, he refers to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome as the Silverdome. For those that don't know, the Pontiac Silverdome, where WrestleMania 3 was hosted with the indoor attendance record.
I don't know what's going on over there, Patrick. I don't know what's going on over there, Patrick. Your phone is cutting in and out.
You're cutting in and out for me, too, so.
You might want to try that last sentence again, because I heard like 2 words of it.
So, like I said, on multiple occasions, he keeps referring to the Silverdome. The Silverdome being where the attendance record was broken by the WWE, and it's also where Hogan slammed Andre. One of those is legitimate. The other one, So, by the point that he's actually done babbling on,
and he does for quite a while.
Yes, he does. This entire opening promo is actually longer than the opening segment of Monday Night Raw. This was over 20 minutes long. With good reason. Because as soon as Hogan's about to wrap up, the glass shatters. And we get Stone Cold Steve Austin, who does not go on nearly as long as Hogan did in the beginning. And before Austin can actually finish his stuff, we get The Rock. So you have, and the commentators even said this, and I would actually agree with that. You have the 3 biggest superstars in WWE history in one ring at the same time on the grandest stage of them all. You there, Harry?
Oh, if you're waiting. if you're waiting for an argument from me, you're not going to get one. I mean, I may not like Hogan, and I've made my recent opinion of The Rock known, but at one point he was one of the biggest things involved in professional wrestling.
I mean, and like we said, though, but here's the thing. The reason I think this went so long and the reason this kicked off the show is because WrestleMania 30 was the first pay-per-view featured on the WWE Network. The WWE Network at this time was still having major issues. And probably the worst that they had ever been was 4 days after the launch of the network when they did NXT Arrival, and 3/4 of the people watching Arrival ended up never seeing the main event because the feed just died. So I have a hunch they had them go long, and they kicked off the show with this so that they could try and make sure that any technical glitches that could occur during WrestleMania don't happen. Which is part of the reason why I think they went so long.
You might be right there, but I'd much rather have my opening segment in the beginning. I'd much rather have that in the beginning of the show than have it like it was at last year's WrestleMania, where it was in the middle of the show and it was just like, really? Come on now. Like, why do we have to have a talking segment in the middle of the pay-per-view?
Because Triple H had to brag about beating Sting, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we actually cover that WrestleMania here in a couple of weeks. Sean, I don't know if it's just us, or if it's just me and Patrick hearing it. Are you getting any issues with our audio?
Yeah, I'm getting. You guys are kind of cutting out a little bit sometimes. It's a little choppy.
All right, I don't know what the hell's going on with it though, because it's the same issues I'm having here. So I'm curious as to if it's like the connection or if it's just Stryker being a pain in the back. So.
No, Speaker wouldn't be doing that. And Skype is showing it's not any colors, so it's got to be y'all's phones or something.
Okay. All right. So back to the
probably be something we'll be able to fix.
Back to the three-way conversation, brother.
Yeah.
Brother.
Yeah. And of course, obviously, as they had to do Rock and Austin, make fun of Hulk Hogan for constantly referring to it as the Silver Dome. But I mean, as a way to kick off the show and get the crowd into it, I actually didn't mind this at all.
Yeah, because who's not going to pop for all that? I mean, and like you guys said, it's the three biggest superstars WWE's ever had in one ring together. I mean, just think, all the they all know each other, and it's also 15 years apart from each other. I mean, it's pretty cool if you just think about all that, all the history and everything. So I didn't have a problem with it. Just when you talk about WrestleMania moments, that's certainly one of them.
I don't.
Yeah, and I think there's very little doubt.
Me and my co-host have varying opinions on a certain person here. He despises Hogan. Yeah. He always has. I don't hate the guy, but I wouldn't call myself a fan either. That being said, I don't think that you can argue that he was the biggest star of the 80s, and I don't think you can argue that The Rock and Austin were the biggest stars of the 90s. Nope. You might be able to put Shawn Michaels into that conversation, but he missed the last year and a half of that decade, almost 2 years.
See, the reason I don't think you could is because when you look at Hogan and Austin and Rock, you're not just talking about history in wrestling. Because when we say they're the three biggest stars of essentially of all time in the WWE, you have to look at everything else that they did. The Rock would end up by this point doing the Scorpion King and having the Fast and Furious movies. Hogan had Thunder in Paradise and did his own movies. Austin was in movies too. So they had. Well,
not to mention Austin holds all of WWE's records.
So. Yeah, but you had they had a presence that went beyond just wrestling.
I would argue that The Rock and Austin are the biggest crossover. The Rock, Austin, and Hogan are the three biggest crossover appeals in professional wrestling history. You won't get an argument from that from me.
Yeah.
So, but as a way to kick off the show, I thought this was awesome, and it, like we said, it definitely made for, a good way to kick off the show at a WrestleMania moment. The first of what would end up being, I think we'd all be in agreement of multiple, WrestleMania moments by the end of this night.
I would argue that as far as WrestleManias go, and especially for the price tag if you were a network orderer, there was no arguing the quality of the show.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, as we move on through the night. But I think it's about time we start getting into the actual matches of the main show. How about that?
Always we must.
Okay. So our first match of the actual main show is a match to determine who will be the third person in the main event triple threat match for the World Heavyweight Championship. That will be the final match. And in this case, it is Daniel Bryan versus Triple H, kicking off the show, which is kind of, I could see why they did it, but in the grand scheme of things, that's the high-quality show opener. And Triple H comes out with his King of Kings throne and with two beautiful valets, but three valets in all. All three would be in masks, and it would be found out later on that the valets would actually be Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte.
Wait, who was the third one?
Kind of a really cool thing. Charlotte.
No, I know Charlotte and Sasha. Who was the third one? I was trying to figure it out.
Alexa Bliss. The blue hair gave it away.
Oh, well, I actually did not realize that was Alexa. And I have somewhat of a major crush on her, too, which is all the more telling that I didn't realize it was her.
I don't know how
I
you
recognize
figured it out just by how damn short. Like, I couldn't believe you couldn't figure it out just by how damn short she was.
You leave midget Alexa alone. She's cute, just at the size she is.
Look, I suffer from fun size syndrome too. I'm only 5'5".
Exactly. You're a midget too, so quiet you.
Don't bite me on the midget talk. At least I was nice and said it was fun size syndrome. Anyway,
I'm 6'3", homie.
Daniel Bryan comes out. Anyway, Daniel Bryan comes out, and I'm just going to say it right here and right now. And I know where your argument is going to come in, and I'll explain why I have the reasoning. I'll explain my reasoning. But to me, this was the greatest WrestleMania opener of all time. Out of 30 years, this was the best opener of all time. And before you or anybody else jumps on my back, because I know Bret and Owen kicked off WrestleMania 10. But yes, I do think this was a better match. And for multiple reasons, because this was not just a 25, 26-minute squash match. They both actually had a really good match, probably one of the best matches I've seen from Triple H in a long time. And, it was definitely a very hard-fought match between the two of them. Triple H pulling out things he doesn't usually pull out. So it was actually great to see him pull out different moves, even now with him being, at this point, 18 years into his WWE career. And I just thought that they actually had a really, really good match here. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, Harry.
I will grant you the fact that it was a really, really good match and arguably Triple H's best in years, because I'll be perfectly honest with you guys, and I think I've said this before, his WrestleMania matches against Undertaker were a little overrated, in my opinion. That being said, I don't think that this approaches Bret Owen as the best opener of all time.
Well, okay, part of that is also the fact that I find Bret to be boring. That's probably the biggest issue I have. I've said it multiple times that I thought Owen was better, but
I think you can certainly argue.
This was not a 4 out of 10 match. This was a great match.
I think you can certainly argue from a technical aspect that Bret Owen is the best one, and they definitely had a really good story going in. But I think from, if you're talking about all the intangibles, you can certainly make a case for Bryan Triple H, because the story that you're telling here is very emotional. It's, yes, you know who's going to win, just like, the thing with Owen and Bret was kind of one of those, like, you didn't know if Bret was going to win or not, But still, they made it really believable that Bryan could lose. There was good near falls and everything. I don't know. I think it's actually a lot closer. But I can see why people probably say Bret and Owen's better.
Yeah. And like you said, it was kind of, everybody knew kind of that by the end of the night, whether he won or lost, I think everybody knew somehow Daniel Bryan was going to end up in the triple threat match. Whether they made it a fatal four-way somehow and Triple H cheated to win. It also probably helped that this match was preceded by one of my favorite videos of all time. And it uses the song that we started tonight's show with. I refer to it as the Monster video, when Daniel Bryan and his unbelievable growth. It was 2 years prior that he lost the World Heavyweight Championship when it was still a single belt in 18 seconds. And to go from that to the almost wrestling cultural phenomenon that he had become was insane. And, there were 75,000 people there, and pretty much it was almost unanimous. Everybody was on Daniel Bryan's side. And unfortunately, you're not going to see something like that, possibly ever again. And I'm not just referring to all the, the problems that fans have with Roman Reigns now, but just to see something like that and be part of that experience is an amazing thing. And I also give credit to Triple H for, like I said, pulling out moves that he does not pull out. I can never remember the name of the suplex. It's where the arms are behind the back, but it's not the full Nelson suplex. I keep wanting to think Tiger suplex, but it's not, where he had both arms hooked.
Dragon.
No, the Dragon's just another name for the full Nelson, really. Are you talking about the capture suplex?
What are you referring to?
The suplex Triple H pulled on Daniel, where he had both of Daniel's arms behind his back, but they weren't up in a full Nelson; they were down.
That's the Tiger.
No, that's a Tiger suplex.
Yeah.
Oh, it is the Tiger suplex. Okay, So I actually was right. So, you don't see Triple H pull out a Tiger suplex, though. And there's a lot of this that it almost seemed like Triple H in this particular match was actually trying to keep up with Daniel in being kind of an evolutionary wrestler. But I thought, that the match that they had was very, very good. And as we now know, in the end, Daniel Bryan ends up winning with the solid knee plus, and proceeds to get teed off 4 times by Stephanie McMahon after the match, and then gets jumped by Triple H, which included a chair shot to the ring post, trapping Bryan's arm and hitting Bryan's shoulder, thereby guaranteeing that Bryan will not be 100% come the main event. Anything else? I'm sorry, I barely heard you. I was trying to make out that last line and I couldn't.
I think that it would virtually guarantee that Bryan would not be 100% for the main event. Oh, with the chair shot after the bell, yeah. The only thing that I didn't particularly care about that is Stephanie had to make it all about herself. And the reason I say that is because there were other ways to get to the fact of Triple H beating down Bryan after the match. Stephanie didn't need to be involved, but as has become a recurring theme over the course of the last couple of years, Steph made it all about herself and setting that up by her distracting Bryan with a bunch of slaps before Triple H attacked it. And I did not appreciate that. I will second your opinion on the Monster music video, though, because that was one of arguably, and we talked about this while we were both watching the show, it's arguably one of the 3 greatest video packages that WWE has ever produced. Which the funny thing about that is we agree on 2 of them and disagree on the 3rd one.
I think the Stephanie one is, you're getting a little bit too much on that because he gives her all the retribution you're going to get in the other match. And I think it actually serves a purpose because when he suicide dives all 3 of them, that's as much as you can hope for Stephanie getting hit by a guy in that.
Yeah, but no, and don't get me wrong. I'm against men on women violence in this kind of context here. I mean, if it's in the course of an actual match of, like, say, somebody like a Candice LeRae taking on somebody like a Joey Ryan, or like in Chicago where males versus females is commonplace and not looked upon as any kind of special attraction. If you have a non-wrestler, then obviously you're not going to have a physical retaliation here. But I'm pretty sure it was common knowledge at this time that Bryan and Brie were together. Why not have Brie in Bryan's corner for this match, or to offset Stephanie at some point?
No, because you don't want to have it overbooked and stuff. It was about Triple H and Bryan, and Stephanie got involved at the end when it didn't matter anymore. I mean, you know.
And I'm also I was hoping to wait until the triple threat to bring up the Stephanie thing because Bryan doesn't hit Stephanie. Bryan only hits 2 of them, and it's actually Scott Armstrong that takes out Stephanie. If you look at it closely, and in reality, Bryan never touches her.
I know, but like, if you really have a big deal, if that's a big problem for you, like, get out of here. I mean, seriously, like,
yeah,
you know, it's in a context of he's just aiming for Triple H, and they all happen to be there at the same time.
And then I think the rest of that argument will probably have to say for the main event, because I think we all have our own piece about everything that goes on there. So I think maybe we should save that for when we get to the main event eventually, and just move on for right now. Sounds like a plan. Sound good? Alrighty. So, and of course, look at the next match that we're going to be talking about here. New Age Outlaws, Road Dogg Jesse James and Badass Billy Gunn, or B.A. Billy Gunn in this case, teaming up with Pain because they represent the Authority, taking on Seth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestlemania 16.
Pretty much. It's pretty much what it is. And they are taking on the United States champion Dean Ambrose, and then Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, Sierra Hotel, India Echo, Lima Delta, it's The Shield. This was a squash match, and nobody's going to tell me any different. This was just a complete one-sided smash in order to get the Shield onto the card. It essentially really serves no purpose because I know what you're going to say here, that it served the purpose of starting everything that's next night. No, it didn't. It really didn't, because if the Shield didn't interfere the next night in that main event, nothing would have been started. But this was a squash, and I still think the Shield could have been better served in a better match.
I disagree.
And here's why. Because you've already got this show loaded on matches here. The last thing you need is another extended length match, because that means they would have had to cut out one or two of the backstage segments that they did, or cut time here from something or there from something or whatever. And then with all the elaborate entrances planned over the course of the evening, and there's something about that I want to mention a little bit later on too, then you would have had to take time away from in order to give the Shield more time here. This was the exact purpose that it needed to be. Kane and the Outlaws made the Shield's life hell in the weeks leading up to WrestleMania 30. The Shield came out and beat their ass to get revenge. And also, one more thing to my point here. One more thing to my point here is there will be many more years to come for the Shield to have standout moments at WrestleMania, even if it isn't as a team. And we'll talk about one of them the following year. That being said, if the New Age Outlaws and Kane were high up on the card for the next WrestleMania, there would have been something seriously wrong with this company.
I still think even facing the Shield, I think they're too high. You know, at this point, the Shield was one of the hottest things that the WWE had, and putting them with the Outlaws and Kane, yeah, they're facing the Authority, but I still think they would have been better served with a better match. But obviously, that's an argument that I don't think either of us will be willing to give on in any way, shape, or form. So it's just I didn't like it because I don't know. It's just I really didn't like it because you didn't need. Why were the Outlaws even there? I get that the only reason they were there was because they were supporting the Authority. Why couldn't you have put them into the tag elimination match? Oh, because it's a pre-show, and you'd have to put that match on too. So it's just I didn't see the point of the Outlaws being there.
You're overthinking this here. It was a way. Remember, the Shield had just started to turn babyface, and it would be firmly established the next night. This was an opportunity to have the Shield in an environment at WrestleMania where they knew the crowd was going to want to cheer for them, and it would be perfectly okay for them to do so.
I guess. But, like I said, I think we've already talked about this longer than the actual match went.
We already have, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Sean?
Yes.
What side of this argument are you on?
I think when we originally talked about this, I was probably more on Patrick's side, but watching it again today, it's hard for me to think that it would have been a great idea to have the Shield go for longer than they did against the Outlaws, who, for as great as Billy Gunn still looks, and, you know, Road Dogg can still kind of do a little bit here and there, it just, you're having guys that are really old go against guys that are very young, who were never just great wrestlers in the first place. And you're going to say...
I would just say that I would argue that Kane at one point was actually a very high-level wrestler, but go ahead, continue your point, Sean.
I'm just saying that the Shield dominate most of the time, and there's been plenty of times where Kane's had long matches with them anyway in six-mans. Just those three against the Shield shouldn't last very long, just when you look at it on paper. And that's the way they had it happen at WrestleMania, and it made sense.
Another point that I want to raise, another thing that I want to raise here real quick about that whole situation, though, is the fact that not only is it a case of the Shield shouldn't have any time putting these elderly gentlemen away like the scrubs that they were at this point, but just as importantly here, I argued with Patrick here that the reason that they did this is because they knew the Shield were going to get a babyface reaction, and why not put them against people that the fans really had no interest in an extended match in and let them squash away?
I kind of missed what you were saying. Sorry.
What did you say again, Harry?
Well, I reiterated to Sean what I said to you about the fact that it should have been a squash because the fans were going to cheer for the Shield regardless of who they were facing, and especially when you could see the babyface turn on the horizon, given the fact that just a month prior they had taken on the Wyatt family at Elimination Chamber. And the thing is, I understand, that you're it's probably because of what you're coming off, and you're coming off, the incredible 6-man tag that they had at Elimination Chamber. And you couldn't do that this month because Wyatt was facing Cena. So it seemed like it was just a way to shoehorn the Shield in. But the Shield at this point were not a group that you should be trying to find a way to shoehorn them in. That's my take on it.
I think if you also think about it, for the other things the other things they have on this show, do you really need something else that takes away from the main event when you look at all the other things they have on this show?
That could very well be part of it because of everything else that happens, that it almost seems like if you had a memorable moment for the Shield, but at the same time it would lose its gravitas considering everything else. But it seemed like they didn't have any plans for the Shield after they blew off at the time with the Wyatts, knowing that the stuff with Evolution wasn't going to happen until the night after Mania. So it was like it seemed like they forgot, oh crap, we got to do something with the Shield. And this just seemed like filler.
Yep. I mean, it is filler. It's a squash match, but I mean, I don't know. You can. We can keep belaboring the point, but I mean,
yeah.
This whole night was not about the Shield, and it was never meant to be.
And that was the point that I was raising. I was perfectly okay with a chance to let them get out there, do their thing, and take it home quick so that way we can move on to what was next.
Yeah, because this match was the Shield's greatest hits. That was it. And, at least the right team won in this case. At least the Shield won. Because the crowd probably would have started turning on them if the Shield had lost in this case. So, but can we finally get off this topic, Harry?
Harry's like, no, we're going to talk about this for another 2 hours.
It seems that way. Anyway, I'm moving on. Our next match, I couldn't even name everybody that was in it if I wanted to.
Yeah, I don't think we need to waste 10 minutes trying to do that.
Yeah, we don't. So, I'll just say that it is as Harry mentioned, the Armbar, the Andrei Rublev Memorial Battle Royal, or if you're actually focusing on WWE and how they put it, the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. 30 men, 1 ring. It's not the Royal Rumble, thank God. Over the top rope play and win.
There's no room for a Royal Rumble on a WrestleMania card. Let's not get crazy here, Ketcha.
Eventually, WrestleMania is going to be 6 hours, and they'll have the time to do it then.
I eventually feel like one day, not anytime soon, but one day we will have a 24 hours of WrestleMania.
Oh God.
I don't think they'll go that much.
I think I can do 5 hours, but that would be the most I could sit there and do.
We're essentially already getting 5 hours with 2 matches in the pre-show, plus the 4-hour event itself. So we're essentially getting 5 hours already. So anyway,
since the WrestleMania pre-show is 2 hours.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I think, moving on, I think in this case there's really only two things that we have to mention here. One is Kofi doing his usual save, which in this case was actually not only kind of cool, but pretty dangerous because of how he had to land. And if he undershoots that jump, he's probably getting hurt. And if he overshoots it by even 2 more inches, spot's blown. So I'll give him credit for that, in which he goes over not the top rope, but over the top turnbuckle and manages to catch his feet on the stairs, thereby saving him because, once again, as the rules go, both feet must touch the floor. I actually thought that was really cool, and it was probably one of the most dangerous ones he's done. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, the only thought that I had when the Kofi did that is how did he not break his damn ankle?
Yeah. So, there's this, like I said, this was probably the most dangerous one because it could go wrong in a number of ways. But luckily, they're able to save it, and I think Kofi ended up proceeding to last another 30 seconds, as is usually a custom with him. It's get in your spot, get out.
That happens to him almost all the time in the Royal Rumble, too. That happens to him almost all the time in the Royal Rumble, too, when he makes that miracle save, and then almost as soon as he gets back into the ring, within a few moments of doing so, he pitched anyway.
Yeah. And then I think obviously, the most important thing that Bear is mentioning is the ending.
Yes, of course.
In this case, I'm even not going to go through the final 4. Our final 2 are Cesaro, who had just split with his tag team partner earlier in the night, and the guy who was the overwhelming favorite, meaning he's going to lose anyway, the favorite of the Battle Royal being Andre the Giant's unofficial son, the Big Show. And I dare anybody to try and deny that with me, that and I think it's WCW 1995 that he actually called the Giant the same guy, not just the Giant's son. Be that as it may, not bad for back and forth, but the whole match ends with, as we mentioned earlier, probably one of the most amazing feats. And Cesaro wins by legitimately body slamming Big Show over the top rope, which that got the crowd into it immediately. And by this point, he was unofficially the Swiss Superman, but by now, after this, he was the Swiss Superman. And I'm surprised Big Show was willing to take that bump. Which, I mean, he didn't take it, that roughly, but at the same time, when you look back to what he said on his Steve Austin podcast, why is he still here? He's there to get younger guys over. And we ended up laughing about that 6 days later at Fastlane when he ends up winning. But be that as it may, this helped get Cesaro over in a big, big way.
Oh, no arguments here. They pretty much used this opportunity right here to make this right here seem to be the beginning of making Cesaro a star. And unfortunately, in one of the rare cases of it happening the night after Mania, the decision that they made for the night after Mania, where Cesaro revealed he's not a subculture guy anymore, but a Paul Heyman guy, that's when you realize that they're really going to do something with Cesaro. And in one of the rare instances of somebody being paired with Heyman and it not working, he just flamed out terribly from there.
Exactly. And and obviously, the problem is here we are now 2 years later, and he's really no further, which kind of, in my opinion, because I'm going to be, scumbag IWC for a minute. I have been a fan of Cesaro / Claudio Castagnoli for many, many years, and he still has not gotten past the pre-show of WrestleMania, which is scary if you really think about it, because even when he went to WrestleMania 31, he was still in the pre-show. But it finally starts to seem like here we are now 2 years later, and now they're finally starting to get something behind him. But you could tell even here, the fans were really behind him, and for him to pull off, body slamming the Big Show over the top rope in order to win, and then, the full split the next night, and him joining with Paul Heyman, which ends up not working, but it still felt like big things were ahead. I think is kind of the idea they were going here. Big things were ahead for him. And, well, we know now. Anything else?
Yes, hindsight being 2020, obviously they could have done more with Cesaro coming out of this, but this right here looked like it was going to be his big step out into the spotlight, and it just never materialized.
Yeah.
Sean?
Yeah, that is basically the big hook of this whole Battle Royal. This is the first one when it meant the most, because now it also set the precedent for the fact that they didn't do a lot with Cesaro, that now these Battle Royals didn't mean anything for whoever the winner was. As when we were going in thinking, oh, this might be a way that they use these to make a new star. It might be like a way to replace, like, what King of the Ring used to do, something like that. And, Cesaro gets kind of nothing. And, to be fair, I think before he got hurt, you could see that maybe Vince had turned the corner and started to finally have faith in him with the whole Cesaro section and all that kind of stuff going about. I think his injury just came at the worst time for him. And you never know, he might have a big spot on this card. The WrestleMania that's about to happen soon.
Yeah. But like I said, that's something we'll never know now, because he's definitely out for that one, and hopefully, he'll be rearing and ready to go by the time WrestleMania. I'll go and call it WrestleMania 33, just because we A, don't know where it is, and B, don't have a logo for it. So WrestleMania 33 next year. So, but like I said, hindsight's always fun.
Much like Seth Rollins when he returns from his ACL surgery, I think that Cesaro's further push is going to depend a lot on the reaction that he gets once he comes back from this shoulder injury. And if he gets anything near the reaction that we're expecting him to, I think that could finally be the reception that he gets from his return, that propels him into the upper mid-card / main event level of the WWE.
At this rate, one can only hope. I think that's the best way to look at it. Is let's hope for the best. In terms of his spot in the company.
It springs eternal, or so they say. All right, let's move on to the next match, shall we?
Yes, and all right. Next match. John Cena puts his legacy on the line, facing Bray Wyatt with the members of the Wyatt family, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. Sean, gotta ask you. Remember the conversation that we were having 1 week ago after Fastlane when we were talking about that 6-man tag team match with the Wyatt family?
Yes.
And we ended up calling, the Wyatt family, they were essentially the eternal losers.
Yes.
Yeah, that pretty much is proven here, because this was essentially Bray Wyatt at his peak, at his top, going up against the poster child of the WWE, and status quo, and Cena wins. And while it was great that they were trying to tell a story, Bray Wyatt trying to bring up a monster in John Cena, but, Cena saying that I don't want that to be a mark on my legacy, which, oh my God, they kept referring to legacy so damn much in this match. But in the great referred to legacy in the end, no.
Well, it's because, Kid Rock has a song, so they have to keep using it.
I know. But they refer to legacy, absolutely nothing happened. That's your takeaway from this. Nothing happened. Cena wins. Cena doesn't use a chair, doesn't use stairs, does nothing to really make anybody question whether he's really going to turn into the monster Bray Wyatt wants him to be. Nothing happens in this match.
You guys killed my joke.
Sorry.
I tried twice to get it off, and you interrupted me both times. The line that I was going to say was, they were hyping Legacy so much here, I half expected Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr. to show up.
Huh.
Oh, God.
Worth it for the girls. Right. Moving on. As far as the match goes, I mean, technically they weren't done here. This was just the first step in their program. But I don't think there's any question that Wyatt came out of it looking worse than he did going into it, and I think that was the problem here. This was Bray's first major opportunity on a big stage, because what was the Wyatt's debut a couple months before this, right?
Give or take.
Because I think they debuted in January of 2014, if I'm not mistaken, in the WWE. And, yeah, this was Wyatt's first opportunity on a major stage in order to establish himself as a potential upper mid-card main event player like we were just talking about with Cesaro. And it's, as you said, he gets to kick out of an attitude adjustment, but that's about all he had going for him during the course of this match. There was one really cool spot I do want to mention when Cena was going for the five-knuckle shuffle and Bray popped up into the spider walk and Cena sold it like he had been shot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a cool spot, but it's just nothing happened. That's probably like the biggest issue I have with this. If they had done something, if Cena maybe had used the chair outside, because it seems like if a weapon's used outside, it won't result in a disqualification. And they kind of, teased it a little bit. Maybe he takes the chair into the ring and then realizes, wait, no, I'm not going to do this. But give something, anything, to make it seem like, maybe Bray Wyatt's going to pull out that monster that he wants to. But nothing. Absolutely nothing. And
no, you guys are wrong here.
Like we said,
Hold on. This is one of those times I think Harry got something wrong. Bray Wyatt debuted on July 8th with the Wyatt family, so they've been around for a while.
Really? It was July of 2013?
Yeah, because remember he had the Inferno match with Kane at SummerSlam.
SummerSlam, you're right. In front of her. Okay. My bad. That one's on me.
So I think it would have been totally fair and totally fine if Bray Wyatt would have beat Cena here, knowing that. This is just one of those things that goes back to, I mean, look, we're obviously looking in hindsight because, they could have corrected that the next pay-per-view and not have him win by the stupid, was it the next pay-per-view where they had him win by the stupid kid singing or whatever?
Yep. Yeah, the cage match.
Yeah, and it was such a fluky win or whatever. He was so over here, and yes, you can make the point of it being a WrestleMania crowd or whatever, but you take that opportunity to do it here, you make all of his promos mean something. They made all his promos die the moment that he loses here because it didn't do anything for Cena, like you guys said.
And I mean, all right, sorry, I'm gonna flash it to Harry again. The crowd the next night on Raw, I was absolutely floored that they gave Wyatt any kind of reaction, especially the reaction that he ended up getting because I believe they would end up being I think it was the Wyatt family in a 6-man tag against Cena, Ziggler, and
Sheamus.
I can't remember. Yeah.
Sheamus.
Okay, thank you. Would A, be the start of the now infamous John Cena sucks chant during his theme song? And B, at one point, and it was during a commercial, and I found that out the hard way. During the commercial, they had almost the entire crowd waving their arms back and forth and singing "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands." And you got a small chunk of this crowd doing it here at WrestleMania, but when you have, the entire arena doing it, and the best part, or the worst part about it is it's not caught on camera. If they had gotten all of that caught on camera, I think Wyatt would have been fine, but it was just bad timing out of anything. And it would take a while still before Wyatt would really start to feel the effects of everything with them essentially almost never getting the win in the end. But this to me was the start of it, because at least he beat Kane in that Inferno match, whatever it was, the Ring of Fire match. That's what it was. At least he beat Kane in the end there. In this case, he never really gets a clean win over Cena, and in the end, here we are 2 years later, and he never really gets a win over anybody, which is the weirdest damn thing.
It's almost like they're really hesitant to trust Bray as a main event performer. And the problem with that is when you deal with the injuries that they've been dealing with lately, you find out just how thin you are at the top of the roster, and then nobody's going to take them serious when you try to make him a main eventer now, because it feels like he's being forced into that position due to necessity rather than any kind of actual story being told to get him there.
Yeah, it's just, once again, this is one of those things that we can look back, hindsight's always 20/20, but I don't like it. I know I'm not the only one that doesn't like it, but
Well, it's also one of those things, too, where they look at it as, Bray Wyatt, because of the way he is, it doesn't matter if he loses. And in context, I think you can say that that's true, but it obviously has shown that for Bray, it does matter, because people pay less and less attention to him because he never wins.
Or if he wins, it's fluky. See cage match against Cena. See TLC match against Ambrose. He give him a clean win one of these days, and for him to have at least when Cena beat Rusev at WrestleMania 31, spoiler alert, I know. But at least in that case, Rusev had a 1-year winning streak behind him. In this case, Wyatt didn't really have a whole hell of a lot. And this would have been his first, like Harry said, his first really major opportunity against the top star on the biggest stage, and he gets nothing. So it's just,
I mean, in fairness to what they did try to do for Bray before WrestleMania, let's not forget that at Fastlane in that six-man tag, at Fastlane, was it still Elimination Chamber? Yeah, it was still Elimination Chamber in 2014. At the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in 2014, they did have Bray Wyatt get the pinfall in that Wyatt Family Shield six-man tag match. And I do believe he pinned Roman Reigns with Sister Abigail.
But it's a pay-per-view. That's the thing that I'm saying. Is like, yeah, you can have him get a clean win, but if you're not really going to give him a clean, non-fluky win on a semi-major pay-per-view, because even when he beats Kane in that Ring of Fire match at Summer, the second biggest show of the year, but he does it because of interference with the Wyatt family. The only time you could really say that he gets a clean, big match victory was 2 months prior to WrestleMania 30, or 3 months prior at the Royal Rumble when he beat Daniel Bryan and did it clean as a whistle. But in the grand scheme of things, we now realize that was actually part of the mistake, and the fact that they went in the opener was probably the bigger mistake.
I was at that show. I'm aware.
I know. All they had to do was not book the first match, and they'd be fine. But be that as it may, I think
the thing was, is if you don't put that match on first, if you have that match on like third or fourth, like right prior to the Rumble, then people are going to know Bryan's not in the Rumble match. And obviously, people are going to be disappointed with the fact that Bryan wasn't in the Rumble, but at the same time, if they understand the reasoning of, he just had a hard-hitting 18-minute match right before, then obviously he's not going to be able to participate in the Rumble immediately thereafter.
Yeah. That's always been my number one thing. If they didn't make their match first, we'd have no issues. But I believe that it is time to move on here, and actually quite a good time to take the break here and talk about the Hall of Fame class that ends up getting introduced following Bray Wyatt and Cena, and only because we're not really going to talk about the Hall of Fame on much of a grand scale.
Right, we're running long as it is already.
Huh?
We're running long as it is already, so we're going to kind of have to keep the Hall of Fame discussion relatively minimal.
Yeah, so, and here, this year, being the 2014 Hall of Fame class, was Lita, Jake the Snake Roberts, Mr. T, Paul Bearer, Razor Ramon, Carlos Colon, and the big headliner, the returning the returning Ultimate Warrior. Not as class. Hall of Fame ceremony, runs 3.5 hours, which is absurdly long. I don't know that any actual sports Hall of Fame ceremony goes that long. I did like Lita getting in. Didn't really see the point of Carlos Colon because the only reason I see Carlos Colon getting in is because so many of his sons ended up working for them, and I know Carlos would work here and there for them. Seeing Ultimate Warrior was a very, very cool thing, and obviously I hate that I have to bring this up. I actually saw the Ultimate Warrior in person for his last 3 days alive, as he would appear on Monday Night Raw the night after this, and then would very sadly, very shockingly pass away that very next day after Raw, that Tuesday. So seeing him at the Hall of Fame, at WrestleMania, and at Monday Night Raw, I ended up seeing him for his last 3 days alive. I do wonder what could have happened in the future if he hadn't, very, like I said, very, very sadly passed away. I was intrigued to see what was going to happen in the future. If, he would have played a bigger part, maybe bigger, better things in the future, but obviously something that we will never know. Any thoughts about the Hall of Fame class?
Sean, why don't you go ahead and go here, and then I'll close it up.
Huh?
I remember watching this, and Lita was always my favorite diva, so that was cool that she got in. Jake was one of my favorites growing up, so getting to see him go in and getting to see his just rehabbing himself and being rewarded for that was cool. And Ultimate Warrior, that was an awesome thing to see him come back. Some of the other ones, it is what it is. You can't have a celebrity win without Mr. T in it.
Oh God!
Yeah. Yeah, the speech is.
Sorry.
It's terrible, but
All right, I will mention one thing. Being at the Hall of Fame ceremony, I can confirm 100% the crowd is so severely edited on Mr. T's Hall of Fame speech on both the network and on the DVD. It's not even funny because when you have to listen for 20 minutes about one guy talking about his mother,
respect his mama.
I would have respected his mama if she was only talked about for 5 minutes, not half of his, let me rephrase that, not half of his damn written speech and the entirety of the damn speech he actually spoke.
You respect his mama
and the entire crowd was. No, I will not respect his mama.
I would like to take this opportunity. I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to Mr. T's mama on behalf of Mr. Pizza.
You will write nothing and apologize or do anything on my behalf.
I am, and I did accept it.
But one thing I did find funny in the grand scheme of things was when Kane goes out to interrupt Mr. T and end the speech, I do like the fact that Kane, the very first thing he says when he comes back out to induct his father, Paul Bearer, is that he has to go, I had to interrupt Mr. T talking about his mama so that I could talk to you about my daddy.
Oh, not going to lie, I cracked up laughing at that line.
Watching it live, the crowd did too.
Both watching it live and watching the replay, I cracked up laughing both times.
Yeah.
And I believe when I was watching it, I said, "Can I speak? Get to Jesus."
I know I am Jesus. Yes, you may speak.
Okay. Anyways, as I was about to say, I believe I texted you when I was watching it, something along the lines of, "Damn it, Kane got me again."
Pretty much. That's pretty much what it ended up being. And the kind of the last thing I'll bring up is I thought it was really, really cool after the end of Paul Bearer's induction when Undertaker came out to honor him too. That was probably the best moment of the night for me, was seeing that, because I'm not even going to get into how I feel about Paul Bearer's kids or anything like that and things that would happen in the 2 years since. But seeing The Undertaker come out, because everyone was kind of wondering who was actually, was The Undertaker going to make an appearance? And doing it the way that they did, I thought was very, very cool.
All right, so I still need to say one thing here real quick, because I know this is going to get me in trouble, and I'm going to say it anyways, because frankly, I don't care. I don't care for the Ultimate Warrior. I never have. I was not a fan of the guy. He was a despicable human being for the vast majority of his life. And it is as a result of something that I said about him right after he passed away that I lost one of my commentary jobs. And I'm going to repeat what I said about him verbatim here on this show, and I want you to judge for yourself. I appreciate the fact that he made amends. I was about to. I appreciate the fact that he made amends at the end of his life. But let's be honest here. The guy was kind of a douche.
Ooh, speaking ill of the dead there, Harry.
Say what, Sean?
Speaking ill of the dead there, Harry. We all have our feelings on people. I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be people that absolutely hated Hogan, and, they may hold back what they feel because, whenever it is that he passes, hopefully not anytime soon, it is what it is. I mean, obviously, they're going to romanticize things because of his last 3 days, but to sit there and, I don't think you're wrong, Harry, in saying how you feel. The dude was not the greatest guy when he was a wrestler, but the same can be said for Shawn Michaels, but Shawn Michaels had a longer time and did it in the spotlight of, redeeming himself.
Yeah, I think it's kind of. I'll just say my little bit real quick is that I do somewhat agree with Harry. That Ultimate Warrior probably wasn't the world's greatest guy to deal with. As a character, I've never really liked him either. With his completely nonsensical promos and everything like that. Did he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Yes, because when he was at his peak, he was super, super popular. No one can deny that. And it's always kind of behind-the-scenes stuff that I think is the major drawback with almost anybody. But like Sean said, we all have our things to say about other people. I have mine about Hulk Hogan. A lot of people have it about Shawn Michaels. Harry has his about Ultimate Warrior. There's always going to be that one controversial, factor, or that one thing that goes against the grain of the mindset of most wrestling fans. Not all, but most. So, it's Harry has his opinion. I have mine.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't the greatest when he left the ring either. I mean, we all know his rants on the internet and the way he would act sometimes going to motivational speeches and all that kind of stuff.
That's more specifically what I would be referring to, Sean, here, is the fact that he was known to... Can I say the word that he used on the air, or will I get us in trouble if I use it?
Well, I guess you're okay with one,
All right. He was known for repeatedly using the word faggot to describe gay people. I am somebody who has a lot of gay and lesbian friends. I do not tolerate that word.
See, it takes
a real despicable person to use it, not only just in day-to-day conversation, but when you're trying to talk to young people whose lives you could be influencing.
And as somebody who is in much the same form of Harry with quite a few gay and lesbian friends, that was pretty much about the time that I took a complete turn about the Ultimate Warrior 2, was when I found out that he was referring to people like that, and then some of his other comments that he would make as a motivational speaker of all things, and that's almost the exact time when I started taking my turn against it too. So I'm in the complete same boat with Harry as that. Anyway, I just
I just have a really bad feeling about the fact that the last memory that a lot of people have for him is a good one, when he did so much damage to other people and his own reputation beforehand. I appreciate the fact that he made amends. I do. I get it. And I'll be honest, he was involved in one of my favorite angles in wrestling that actually made me a wrestling fan, and I've never told you this, Patrick. Do you remember the Ultimate Warrior Undertaker? Do you remember the Ultimate Warrior Undertaker angle?
Yeah, with Jake also involved.
Yes, specifically the segment with Jake the Snake Roberts and the Ultimate Warrior?
Yeah.
Those were some of the first segments I watched as a fan. And one of these days I'd like to cover the Jake the Snake DVD set if we get the opportunity to, because I have it, I think you have it, and it's actually a really good set. But the main thing about that set that stands out to me is the fact that all of those segments between Jake, Warrior, and Taker are available on that DVD too.
Yeah. It's something that we'll have to put on our list once we get through all of our WrestleManias as we are doing, and I think it's about time that we continue on here with the actual show. And boy, this next match is going to be one that's going to be tough to talk about. It is.
For yourself.
Huh?
Speak for yourself.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not going to be hard. It's just, boy, it is the Beast versus the Streak. It is Brock Lesnar, the Beast incarnate, taking on the 21-0 at WrestleMania Undertaker. And I remember being there live and seeing how things were going. And I had told Harry that I had not watched this match. Any time that I went back and watched WrestleMania 30, I always skipped this match. I did not want to watch this match. And Shawn Michaels is always my favorite wrestler, Stone Cold being second. The Undertaker, for me, though, to me, is still one of the greatest, is the greatest gimmick. I think I stole how Jim Cornette put it. The Undertaker is the greatest gimmick in WWE history. And it's one of those things where you actually start to believe that the streak will never end. But it took 3 F5s, but it actually happened. As for the first time at WrestleMania, Undertaker loses and pretty much set Brock Lesnar off onto a path that would take him to the World Heavyweight Championship come that SummerSlam. And here we are now approaching WrestleMania 32, and I'm saying the number for a reason, where he still has not taken a pinfall since losing to Triple H at WrestleMania 29. As far as this match goes, this was not that good of a match. It wasn't a bad match, but it was definitely not one that to me belongs in the upper echelon of Undertaker streak matches, because this was about the time where it was getting to be, would the Undertaker actually be able to go at WrestleMania? It was, this was that like 2 or 3 year span where you really weren't sure if he was going to get back to WrestleMania in time. And then also the story coming out of here is very early in their match, Undertaker ends up with a major concussion and goes through, I believe it was something about 2/3 to 3/4 of the match and everything that happens after, not remembering a damn thing. Which, like I said, I was there, and when that when that 3 count happens and the pinfall is made official, sure, it's made fun of, but that was the legitimate reaction of that crowd. It was not played up. It wasn't, some actors portraying that. Yes, you have the one goofy guy in the very front row with that really goofy look on his face, but that's how the crowd was. That's how I was. That's how my friends were. There were, I believe, 4 of us at WrestleMania that night. The crowd was legitimately in shock because it was one of those things where you had a feeling it was going to happen eventually, but you didn't expect it to actually happen. And I believe JBL also says that on commentary. And it was really an amazing thing to see, to actually see the streak end. And I know I've talked for a good long time about this, but that's definitely one moment. That's a definite WrestleMania moment. It's something I'll never forget. Was being in that crowd, and it was actually at that point I considered never going to WrestleMania again because I figured I was bad luck. Mind you, I was 22 at the time. So it was an amazing thing to see, to actually see the streak end.
It's an interesting conundrum you find yourself in regards to looking back on this match in hindsight being what it is here. Because of everything that would happen with Brock Lesnar going forward, you almost feel as if this was the next step in the progression of the Beast Incarnate. This right here, where he more or less dominated this match against Taker, which led to him completely obliterating John Cena at SummerSlam, and kicking off that run that did not end until WrestleMania the next year, where he wasn't pinned. the streak ending is something that has always been debated by fans here, and it'll always be debated here as to whether or not Brock was the right guy for the streak ending here. And I'm going to say that upon having this conversation with a lot of people, I actually think that Brock was the right guy, and here's why. Brock was a legitimate athlete, a multi-sport badass. Taker was all kinds of messed up during the course of this match. And if you were to have a younger talent, such as somebody like a Cesaro or like a CM Punk the year before, or, God forbid, like a Randy Orton back when they were originally talking about Orton ending the streak back in 2005, I believe it was.
Yeah.
If you would have had somebody like that being the one to end the streak, then they would have had to carry that with them. They would have had to carry the streak ending with them throughout the rest of their career. And I don't know if any of them would be up to the pressure that would come from the fan reactions to the fans booing and treating them as such as they would for a guy like a Brock Lesnar. The thing about Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar has Paul Heyman talking for him. Brock Lesnar could basically get away with murder and still have the fans cheering for him. Brock Lesnar is the one guy on the roster who could take the hit of being the guy to end the streak and not coming out looking worse for it. Sean?
I'm not gonna deny, that it absolutely would be tremendous amount of pressure for, a younger guy to carry. The hell of a weight to bear. I had always said, once I heard that it was going to be Bray Wyatt and The Undertaker at 31, both of the guys should have won the year before, but Brock Lesnar probably was the perfect guy to do it, above any and all. And like I said, he had Paul Heyman as his voice, and they talked about it on commentary that at the time he was probably in the running as one of the greatest managers, but with Brock winning, you could essentially put him up there with Bobby Heenan as the greatest manager of all time. And it helps that Paul Heyman is a hell of a talker, and it's the fact that Brock Lesnar, it's not the fact that he doesn't look worse off after it, it's the fact that it doesn't matter if he looks better or looks worse or anything. Brock Lesnar's the kind of guy that doesn't give a damn. And that's what helped above anything else. And like you said, this would send him off into the match for the world title where he absolutely destroys John Cena. Excuse me. And really push Brock even further, which to me, though, I didn't think Brock really did need a further push. But it's something that he's able to bear with no issue whatsoever. So Brock Lesnar, to me, would have been the perfect guy to end the streak. He had, like you said, a legitimate multi-sport background. He was an NCAA champion. He was the UFC champion. He would become the WWE World Heavyweight Champion from this match. So he was the perfect guy to be able to do it. And having one of the greatest talkers of all time sure as hell helped. So it's just, it was something that you just didn't expect. And also for me, the ending to this match kind of gave away the ending to the main event. But we'll talk about that, when we get to the main event. But it was just.
How would it give away the ending? We all knew the ending to the main event.
Well, that's true. Harry gave it away already. Once the Undertaker lost, this told me Bryan's leaving with the belt, because they would not have the Undertaker lose the streak and then have Daniel and then dump on Bryan also losing in the main event. I immediately, I think everybody knew Bryan was winning that match then.
I mean, you're right.
I do feel bad for the next match as soon as we get there. I do feel bad for the next match, though.
No one cared about that match anyway. So
Yeah, it's not exactly like...
didn't help them.
It's not like anybody gave nobody gave a damn about the Vicky Guerrero Divas Invitational.
And WWE didn't give a damn about it either. So who cares? It
was thrown together 6 days before WrestleMania,
right,
with the if I'm not mistaken, it was announced on the Raw before WrestleMania. AJ Lee was already in the process of being, I think she was at that point the longest reigning, because I believe she dropped it the next night to Paige. Everybody knew when it came to AJ Lee, you were waiting for Paige to arrive. And I'm sorry for immediately going into that match, but that was the exact thought process of that match, and that's all I'm going to have to say about that match, because the match itself was god-freaking awful.
Yeah, there's nothing to say about that match.
There was no other match on this card that was announced that could have followed Brock and Taker, because that was a death spot.
No, and it was a death spot. It was a death spot to the match, the main event too. Let's be honest. I think they could have put this earlier in the show. I think it was just out of respect that they felt like they had to put it second from the top or whatever, and I understand that point, but I think it hurt the beginning of the main event too, because people were still shell-shocked about it. You guys pretty much said everything that needs to be said about the Brock winning. I agree with you guys. I think I said that as much in the original review that we did on W2M, so, it's just one of those, when you look back at it, they've done a great job of making him. I don't know that he still has that same cachet now, but for a long period, it really was whoever beats Brock is going to be the guy that beat the streak, And I don't know that it's the same way now, but they've done a great job protecting him since then, and he is a guy that could carry that. Nobody else could have. It doesn't matter who you bring out there, but and to be honest, I remember not liking that match that much first watch, and I rewatched it and I was like, you know what, for Undertaker being concussed, that dude still did a hell of a lot. So, I cringe now watching it, knowing he had a concussion pretty much early into the match, but that's still pretty awesome that a guy his age still went out there and did what he did with that.
That shows Taker's dedication to the craft that he was still able to put on as relatively respectable of a performance as he did, given his status. Let me ask you a question, Sean, and then we'll move on, because we've talked about this match now for about 10 minutes. In regards to Brock being the guy to break the streak here, do you agree with my assessment and the general conversation that who else on the main roster could live with the burden of being the guy to break the streak?
Oh, nobody. Nobody else on that roster could have done that other than Brock. I mean, he's the only guy.
And I was just going to say, and I guarantee you that if they had done the rumored Cena breaking the streak thing that was planned...
never mind. I didn't think about Cena. Cena is the only other guy.
I disagree.
Cena and Brock only.
Because I think if you have Cena break the streak, he loses most of the fan base that he has left.
I don't know. I think a lot of the kids did not grow up with Undertaker the way we did.
Okay, but the older female fans and the adult male fans that he does have, I think he turned them against him because of the fact that he's the one that breaks the streak.
But does it? Here's the deal, though. It doesn't matter, because all that does is now you can turn Cena heel and you just keep making more money with John Cena. But nobody else, you can do that, because I think they would have just gotten go away heat at that point. John Cena's been around so long that if he would have been the guy, it would have been more of a passing the torch moment, but you hate Cena, and then WWE decides what they want to do with that. But Brock is the only guy that can just keep doing it, because he was already a heel, and people like him now, and it's whatever it is, but he was already that dastardly guy that just, dude, you just love to hate, and Paul Heyman would keep doing that, and now you had more reason to. It helped his character so much, getting that streak.
Patrick, you can say whatever you want to about this next match. I already said my little bit of my piece during the course of the last match. I have nothing else to add here.
Oh, it's switching gears to the Divas Invitational or the Big Hero, whatever the hell it was. Who cares? The only thing that I have to talk about is the very, very ending. Go ahead.
Sorry, I do have one thing to add. Layla looked hot. Okay, I'm done.
Well, yeah, duh. Basically, I'm trying to remember who AG had the Black Widow on. Was it Naomi?
Naomi, yes.
Okay. It's the fact that Naomi screwed up the finish. Why? Because the actual finish, AJ pulls her part of the actual finish in the fact that the actual finish supposedly was supposed to be AJ on the arm that AJ applies the pressure to on the Black Widow. She was supposed to use that arm to kind of force Naomi to tap out. And she does do that. The problem is, Naomi actually taps out. So they ended up kind of flubbing up the finish. They were supposed to make it seem like AJ, was going to be a by any means necessary thing, even if it meant kind of cheating to win by making it look like Naomi tapped out, until Naomi actually tapped out. So she essentially double tapped out. Other than that, this match was a complete cluster. It was 4 Team Divas, and unlike the Andre the Giant match, this was not a battle royal. It was one fall to a finish.
I don't know how in the world you can have a 14-person match like that.
I'm glad that things have changed, and especially the way that it looks like now. Coming up with this WrestleMania, we're going to have 2 Divas matches, but one of them is going to be a triple threat for the title. You could definitely tell, and I know, everyone makes fun of the whole Divas Revolution thing, it didn't get over, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, look at the Divas match that we had 2 years ago for the title, and it was just completely thrown together last minute. Nobody cared. And you look at the match that we're probably heading towards at this WrestleMania being Charlotte versus Sasha versus Becky. What's changed in 2 years? So I'll give them credit. While the Revolution may have started slow, but it's still getting there. And, we're all going to wonder what's going to happen with the other Divas match. But at least there's an actual high-quality match that we have to look forward to now. And that's all that I have to say about it now. So, anything else?
I said my pieces.
Okay.
Nothing.
Exactly. And thank God Paige debuted the next night, and AJ botched the finisher, and blah, blah, blah. So, then it is main event time. It is Daniel Bryan, after winning his match with Triple H, versus the 2014 Royal Rumble winner, Batista, facing the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, Randy Orton, triple threat match, and this was actually a really good match. Sure, Batista's, gassed after 5 minutes after doing absolute jack-all, but besides that, the match itself was actually very, very good. And, the entire thing was basically Daniel Bryan versus the world, because, it would kind of be mentioned in passing here, but it would be mentioned more and more after, is that in order to get to the World Heavyweight Championship, Daniel Bryan had to beat 3/4 of Evolution. Randy Orton, Batista, and Triple H. The actual match, though, I thought was really, really good. I did feel very, very sorry for Randy Orton. with the fact that when they go to do the Batista Bomb / quote-unquote RKO, even though it was a neck breaker, but it was the best that they could do, given the move. The fact that he lands back first on a monitor.
Oh.
And RK adjacent.
Yeah. To me, in the legitimate part of it, Randy Orton came out worse than Daniel Bryan in that move. Like, and I'm talking in the legitimate, not in the wrestling world of it, because, Daniel Bryan took a Batista Bomb and, an RKO style back neck breaker through a table. So, of course, he's, nearly dead, so will be taken out on a stretcher. But Randy Orton came very, very close to possibly having to be actually taken out on a stretcher, because that was not pretty. And that is actually Batista's fault, because he's the one who dropped the monitor, and that was the monitor that Orton landed on. And then, as we all know now, in the end, after Scott Armstrong interference, Stephanie McMahon interference, Triple H interference, getting put onto a stretcher, getting taken off of a stretcher, in the end, Daniel Bryan ends up winning cleanly. No money in the bank cash and nothing like that. He is leaving WrestleMania 30 as the World Heavyweight Champion, making Batista tap out to the yes/no/low bell lock, setting off an insane celebration. Yeah, so what do you guys think? Now that I've talked for 5 straight minutes. It was okay. You jerk. In all seriousness there. So here's the thing. I don't disagree with the way that it went down. I mean, obviously they could have taken a better road to get here, but I think WWE, with the response of the fans of everything after what went down at the Royal Rumble, kind of knew that the only way to make good for that would be to have Bryan leave WrestleMania as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. I think we can all pretty much agree that Batista's return to the company in 2014 was a complete and utter flop. But I don't necessarily think that it was Big Dave's fault, because the ring work that Big Dave put in throughout this match, as well as in the Shield series of matches between Evolution and the Shield, was really good. It's just the case he happened to be a victim of some bad circumstances, and he was the one who ate the brunt of it, specifically being his Rumble win in Pittsburgh. That being said, the match itself was really good. I agree. I don't think it was as good as the opener, and I think you guys will agree with me on that one. But this was everything you'd expect a WrestleMania the main event to be. You had big bumps, you had major spots, you had high drama, there was a little bit of overbooking, but with the way that the overbooking was countered there, it led to a sense of satisfaction in regards to the entire overall storyline, being that Bryan finally got the best out of everybody, including the Game, Mrs. Game, and Scott Armstrong. Sean?
I mean, you kind of summed it up there, Harry. Ain't a whole lot left to say. I mean, just, Daniel Bryan was my favorite and still is, even though he's, retired now. To see him have that moment, and like you said, I don't even agree that to me, it's not overbooking when it satisfies those things in the story. To me, it's overbooking when you have things that you could say don't need to be there, but that needed to be there. Part of that is yes, he overcame Triple H, but the stuff at the end would suffice that there needs to be them showing up later in the match, and he does, and Bryan takes them all out, and then takes Triple H out with his own weapon, which is like even more satisfying, and just everything in that match. Just, I thought that, they all worked to make Bryan look the best. I thought obviously they're trying to knock Bryan out because he's the weakest, and they kind of did him a favor so that he doesn't have to be in there constantly after having worked the first match. So I didn't. Normally, I would complain about it having the triple threat formula and all that kind of stuff, but that was one of those times where I think you can forgive it because of the first match. But just you get that crowning. That's what when we talk about WrestleMania moments, when we talk about those like crowning achievement kind of things, like to still believe sometimes, like I can't believe it myself that Bryan is going to be one of those that we always talk about, that he got to have that ultimate WrestleMania moment, the one that we think right now Roman Reigns is going to try to have, but it won't be in the same way that Bryan had it, where he is a universally loved figure, and they want Roman Reigns to be that guy, but he won't be, So, just, it's crazy. It's still crazy to me.
Now, my question to you both, because we've talked about kind of the booking of the match. So let's go through everything real quick. Bryan worked one match, and I'm saying Daniel Bryan, not Bryan Danielson or however you want to say it. Bryan already worked one match. So the Batista bomb into a neck breaker through a table, getting put onto a stretcher and taken off of the stretcher. He's having to work a second match against Orton and Batista. Not only that, he's facing interference from Triple H, who wants to use the sledgehammer on him. He has to deal with a crooked referee. He also has to deal with Mrs. H. Yes, I get that, there's the overcoming all of the odds moment, but it almost seemed like this was like the only real gripe, was it seemed like they were trying to smash everything into this match. And it seemed like, to me, I thought it was overbooked just because of everything that he had to go up against. And yeah, it's kind of the overcoming all the odds thing, but it seems like you're blowing everything off all at once. It's just, to me, it seemed like they were actually trying to do too much. And that's something that, I usually complain that they don't do enough. But this is one of the very few cases like they were trying to do too much. Just with everything that had to happen just in this one match, in these 25 minutes. I don't know. I'm guessing I'm kind of alone in that. I thought that there was too much into this match.
Fair enough. The thing is, they were trying to wrap up the story in a nice bow and not have it be something that, he's still got to take care of some things on Raw the next night. Just, he took care of everybody in one fell swoop throughout the match. And you get it all in one. Yeah, you could say he smashed it together and all of that, but that's what you want. That's the whole Bryan story has been, that is overcoming, and it's more fitting that he just overcomes it all. You're done when you win, and now it's finally about Bryan being champion.
See, I think it could have done. My thinking is, I probably could have done without the table spot.
Okay.
Because I think that's kind of my major thing. Is I think they could have done without the table spot, or they could have, like, something else could have happened instead of that. It's just, to me, particularly with that one, because you're essentially taking two finishers through a table. But it's my only gripe here. Other than that, the match itself is pretty damn awesome. And then obviously Bryan getting the win in the end, giving us essentially our final WrestleMania moment of a night that had already been filled with them. Does make for a nice bow right at the end there. So obviously, it's a very stupidly small thing to nitpick almost. So, Harry, do you have any thoughts on it?
I already said my piece here. I feel like I feel like there was I feel like there was a tiny bit more booking than there really needed to be. But that being said, as Sean said, everything that Bryan overcame throughout the course of the main event was the entire story of the match going up into it, even going all the way back to SummerSlam. Back when at SummerSlam it was Triple H who screwed him out of the title, and then the following month at Night of Champions it was Scott Armstrong. So everything that happened there happened. Everything that happened at WrestleMania happened to pay off the long-term storytelling that they may have looked into by adding Bryan last minute to the main event, or may have been trying to tell the entire time. We'll never honestly know whether or not it was planned, or if they decided due to the reactions that it was going to end up Bryan being involved in the main event.
Yeah, and obviously you also have to look at the CM Punk factor also to see how, like, you know, the stories have all been said that originally it was only supposed to be Bryan versus Sheamus at this pay-per-view. You know, whether or not that's a lie and this was planned all along, we'll never know. So, but
and honestly, regardless of the fact, regardless of the fact that it may or may not have been planned of the entire time or not, they still walked into it, and the way that they were able to sell it off, it made perfect sense with the way that the story finally came to its conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little doubt about that, you know, considering that this was a legitimate storyline, which is, in this case, this is something in the WWE. They really don't see that often at all. You know, you don't see something go for 8 months to a year. So for them to be able to pull this off, you know, is almost phenomenal in their case. You know, for continuity's sake, I think.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes?
We're right on the 2-hour mark right about now. You ready for the big finish?
Oh, yeah.
All right, before we do that, I want to once again remind everybody that tonight's episode of Wrestling Unwrapped is brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. You can find them by searching on eBay. In addition, we will be posting the link on our Facebook. But by the way, Patrick, where can people find us on Facebook?
People can find us. You find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped. And, of course, you can always find us on Twitter at WU Off the Shelf. We generally do post to Twitter more often. That's my doing. But we also do match-by-match ratings, and Harry does his all-time list of all matches that we've covered on our Facebook page. And, well, we try to keep that as updated as possible. Occasionally, we may miss week to week. And then also, you can find Wrestling to the Max on Twitter at Wrestling2Max, and also at W2M Network, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Wrestling2the-Max for the group, or facebook.com/W2M Network for the page. I think I had that in the right order.
Works for me.
Sean?
All right, let's kick it.
I think I had it anyway. So, as we always do, it's time for Cash and Trash, and the best and the worst match of the show. Why don't we start with the matches this time, because I think we're actually going to be in agreement here for both.
I have a funny feeling that you may be right about this one.
So, only because it's super obvious. Harry, what's your worst match of the card?
My worst match?
Yes.
Oh, John Cena, everyone, no, kidding, no. The Vicky Guerrero Divas Championship match. It served the exact purpose it needed to serve, which was to pull the crowd down from the shock value of Lesnar ending the streak.
Yeah, it was nothing more than filler to kill time, so that the crowd could calm down from crying after Lesnar and Taker, and could still get them ready to go for the triple threat main event. So that's that.
Sean, are you chiming in for our Trash Fest course?
Yeah. Well, it's the same two matches. So
Okay. Then we'll get your cash and your trash then. Right.
the cash, I mean, has to be the whole.
Not yet. Not yet.
Oh,
not yet.
okay.
We're still
I'm
working
sorry.
on best.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Harry and Sean, all right. I think we'll ask it as a formality since we already know what our worst match is, and that was pretty damn obvious. Almost as a formality, Harry, Sean, what's your best match of WrestleMania 30? Harry first.
We may actually disagree on this one because it's entirely possible one of you may pick the triple threat, but to me it's the opener between Bryan and Triple H.
Oh, Bryan and Triple H, yeah.
Yeah, we're all in agreement. It's the opener.
Although I do want to give a shout out. I do want to give a shout out to the 8 men on that pre-show tag match there because that match was way better than any pre-show match really has the right to be.
You haven't watched the Fastlane pre-show match, have you?
Del Rio Kalisto, I have actually. It wasn't bad. I expected more, and I was also surprised at the fluky finish. So, but anyways, regardless, back to the show at hand here, so we can finish before 11:30.
Well, you got to give a damn reasoning.
I already gave my reasoning when we talked about the match at the start of the show. If you want to know my reasoning why this is the best match, rewind to the beginning of the show. We'll wait for you here.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back. And there's your reasoning, all the reasoning that you need for why it was picked as our best match.
It was the best match on the show. I mean, you had the story was told there. They had more story there with Bryan and Triple H than you had in the other match because this was what the main crux of the whole thing was. It was Bryan against Triple H.
Yeah, the triple threat almost became an afterthought once this match happened, which made me surprised that it was going to be the opener. But yeah, I don't think there's really any question that it is the best match on the card. Just seeing the two of them both go and both hold up their end of the bargain in this match, for like you said, almost a half an hour. It was a great way to kick off the show and a great way to get the crowd into it. So, yeah, I think it's total agreement, and there's really no question about it that this is the best match on this card. So
it just seems almost. You'll just have to forgive me, Patrick. It just seems kind of counterproductive to re-describe why we thought it was the best match when we went into explicit detail about it earlier. So that's why I didn't really feel the need to expand.
Fair enough. So, moving on then, Harry, what's your cash? What's going to be strolling the Big Easy well into the night? What's your cash from this? What's your takeaway from this?
All right, so since we're actually covering the DVD set here, because in my case I actually have the DVD set, in my case it includes the Hall of Fame ceremony, my cash is Jake the Snake Roberts Hall of Fame speech. I will openly admit to being a massive Jake the Snake Roberts mark. He was one of my favorites when I was a kid, and as I said earlier in the show, one of my earliest memories of wrestling is the Jake the Snake Ultimate Warrior Undertaker vignette. That being said, you don't even have to be a wrestling fan. If you're a decent human being hearing to Jake talk about his story during his Hall of Fame speech and it doesn't touch you, I feel pity for you. There have been a lot of good Hall of Fame speeches over the years. Jake's may damn well be the best. Sean, what is your cash?
Oh, well, for me, I didn't have the DVD set, so for me, it has to be the whole story with Bryan just coming to a completion and just getting to see that moment there at the end. It makes watching that entire WrestleMania worth it.
You're supposed to keep Patrick.
Sean, are you there?
Patrick, you're up.
See, I'm actually torn between the two things because I legitimately, I'm going with Harry, and I didn't even think that we would actually match up on this. I figured I was going to be kind of the fluke surprise on that. But absolutely, out of the entire 9 hours, because Harry and I legitimately watched almost every minute of this set. I think it was one Hall of Fame speech. Jake the Snake Roberts' speech, I would implore anybody, go out of your way to look for this speech, because it is not your usual, I like to think this person, I like to think that person, but Jake tells the story and cuts, he cuts what might be his greatest promo ever. And it is an extremely, extremely emotional speech. And it gave me goosebumps when I was there. It gave me goosebumps again. It's Jake telling the story, essentially, of his life on the road and everything that he went through as a wrestler. And it is a very, very
Patrick?
heartfelt, very emotional thing that he doesn't have a speech written for. That's the thing about it. He has no papers out there with him. He does that on his own. It almost proves how good of a speaker he is.
Patrick?
Yeah.
There are very few times in my life as a wrestling fan, and I've been watching now for about 25 years, because I started when I was 6. There are very few times that wrestling has gotten me misty-eyed. Jake's speech is one of them. I 100% second what Patrick just said. If you have never seen Jake's Hall of Fame speech, you owe it to yourself to do so.
I have a hunch we're all going to agree on this next thing. Harry, what's your trash for this show? What's the worst part about this entire DVD set?
I hate to beat a dead horse, but that Divas Championship match. Now, if I'm not actually picking a match, if I'm picking a segment or something to choose for that, then
if you want to go with that, you absolutely can.
Well, the thing about it is for as bad as Carlos Colon's speech was, and to be honest with it, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I am not bilingual, therefore I did not understand a good portion of it. And for as much as you ragged on Mr. T's speech, if only for the sheer comedic value of Kane's timing, kind of redeeming that. Nothing about that DVD particularly strikes me as being trashy, with the exception of the Divas Battle of the Divas, the Vicky Guerrero Divas Invitational. Sean?
Yeah, I am bilingual, so I can't hate on Carlos Colon's speech. Thought it was from the heart when I heard it the first time. You know, it has to be that Divas Battle Royal. That was the worst thing about that show, and it was just such an afterthought, and they really could have just not had it at all, and nobody would have cared.
Patrick?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question with me. And I don't care if you mentioned it already, Harry. Mr. T's speech. It is laughably bad. The crowd was making fun of him by the end of it. And yes, Kane has absolutely impeccable timing and a very good sense of humor to make the joke that he did, after. But by that point, it was way too late. And I don't like the fact that if you watch it on the network or on the DVD, I've watched both versions, the crowd is so severely edited during Mr. T's speech, it's not even funny. Because the crowd was flat out just laughing at him by the end. and pulling out the what chant, which the what chants with all the holidays made me think that this whole thing was an actual gimmick and it was not a legitimate speech. But who the hell knows at this point? If you need a good laugh, look for this speech. If you want something, if you take the Hall of Fame ceremony somewhat seriously, skip this speech. Never watch it because it is horrendous. So that's that, and I've said my final piece on that. So that's the last time I'll mention it. So before we get out of here, we got one more thing to take care of. And I'm actually going to start with Sean this time. Sean, what is your overall grade for WrestleMania 30, the pay-per-view, and well, in Harry, in my case, it'll be for the entire 3-disc set. But what's your overall grade here?
I think overall I wound up giving it a 9 when we reviewed it on WTM originally. And I don't think anything from this show has made me feel any different. It tells one complete story from the beginning to the end. It's a story we all wanted to see. Both those matches delivered. You have the shock and awe of the Undertaker and Lesnar match, which even though it wasn't one of Undertaker's greatest during this streak run, it's still a pretty good match from that perspective. The only thing that's bad is the Divas Invitational. You have the moment with Cesaro where you thought it was going to mean something for him. Cena and Wyatt is pretty good, even though we know what happens with Wyatt. It still, for that moment, it was still, he took Cena to the limit in that match. So, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot. There really isn't a whole lot bad to say about this show. This is probably one of the, you guys were saying that 8 deserved it and all this kind of stuff. You can argue that 30 legitimately could deserve to be in this 5 or 6, 7 range of all-time WrestleManias.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you, and I'm guessing Patrick was going to have me go next anyway, so I'm going to go on and pick up where you left off here. I completely agree that if you were to rate the WrestleManias 1 through 31 in order of importance, I don't think there's any question to me that WrestleMania 30 would definitely be in my top 5. That being said, I personally have WrestleMania 8 just a little bit higher than it for the sheer nostalgia value that I find WrestleMania 8 holds. And that has more to do with the fact of matches like Brett and Piper and a match like Savage and Flair. That being said, for this show itself, I give the show itself an 8. I give the DVD set an 8.5. And I'm going to go with the 8 rating for my official grade because we tend to focus specifically on the shows rather than the presentation and everything involved there. But I will say that I agree in the fact that this is an all-time great WrestleMania. Patrick?
Yeah, there's really no doubt, and Harry and I could hem and haw, we could have won WrestleMania 8, but yeah, that's pretty much for almost a pure nostalgic factor. But in terms of WrestleMania 30, I'm actually going to go ahead and give both the show and the set an 8.5. Like I said, this could very easily be looked at as one of the all-time greats. And no, it's not going to be a number 1. But at the same time, I think Harry and I both picked, kind of what's usually up there for the 1 and 2. But you could put this in, in the top 5, most definitely in the top 10 for best WrestleManias. You had 3 solid matches in the Street and Daniel Bryan's both matches. Yes, in the grand scheme of things, it's Rolf, wins, but despite being kind of boring, it wasn't bad. The Divas Invitational, and the Battle Royal, you could see big things ahead for Cesaro, and this would have been a great, great launch pad. And it made for an incredible moment. And, we could talk about this show 3-4 years down the road, and if Cesaro was bigger then, you could look back and say, oh, this was the launch point. This got the crowd behind them. So you have, 5 moments here on a 7-match card going with the actual pay-per-view that makes it an extremely solid show. The Hall of Fame, was the Hall of Fame. I do find it nice, but it does get kind of boring eventually. And the other promos and things that were the special features, AJ versus the World, Hulk Hogan talking about his career, a look back at Andre the Giant ahead of the Battle Royal. They were very nice and gave you, a good nostalgic feeling, of the past and the history leading up to this pay-per-view. The top 30 WrestleMania moments, Harry and I both found pretty laughable anyway, so that, we'll ignore. But the other things actually did kind of add to it, so I'll go with an 8.5.
Thank you for pointing that out, because the sheer ranking of some of those moments in the nostalgia countdown was ridiculous.
We'll put it this way, folks, or I'll put it this way, folks. Brett versus Austin, the submission match, doesn't even make the top 10. I'll leave it at that.
I don't think it's even in the top 20.
No, I think it is. I think it's like 13 or 14.
Regardless, the fact that isn't top 5 is retarded.
He's up on that. I don't like that.
Watch it now.
So yeah, I think it's definitely a very high quality. This is one I would absolutely say seek out, try to find, and I think for me, and I don't know Harry too, this might be the top scores we've given so far on the show, and it very, very much deserves it. So we're out of time.
I think it ties my highest rating, but yeah, it's definitely up there.
So that pretty much does it for us. So be sure to tune in next week, hopefully this same time, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. We had some technical difficulties. Do apologize about that, hence the late start. And be sure to join us as Sean, Harry, and I will now go through chronologically all of the WrestleManias that we have picked out. So what better way from one of the biggest moments in WrestleMania history with Daniel Bryan win the belt and seeing the global and cultural phenomenon that was WrestleMania, where else would we want to start than with its very beginning? So next week, we're going to be covering the one that started it all, WrestleMania 1, March the 31st, 1985, from Madison Square Garden, with the main event, Mr. T, WWE Hall of Famer Mr. T, and Hulk Hogan team against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff with special guest everything. So that should be a very interesting show. So, for Sean Garmer, Harry Broadhurst, and I'm Patrick Tetza. We'll see you next week. You have been listening to Wrestling Unwrapped here on the W2M Network, and brought to you in partnership with 411mania.com and lastwordonsports.com. We'll see you next week, guys.
Later.
Au revoir, home places.
Oh.